All right, today we're going to break down the architecture of the U.S. immigration detention system. But we're not going to look at this through a purely political lens. Instead, we're going to follow how the source material lays it out as a business, a permanent, investable market. Okay, let's just start right here. This quote from our source material, it really sets the stage for everything we're about to talk about. The analysis is pretty blunt. We're not talking about software or logistics. The core product, it argues, is a person in a bed, a billable asset. And this is the number, $164.65. You could call it the atomic unit of this whole economic machine. It's the projected daily revenue for just one person in detention. Every single massive number we're going to look at today, it all scales up from this one transaction happening over and over again every single day. So you got to ask, right? How does an industry like this even get off the ground? Where does the startup money come from, and how does it lock in its revenue? Well, let's follow the money trail. And it starts, as it so often does, with legislation. The source points to one specific piece of legislation, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act of 2025. And the number is just staggering. $170 billion over 4 years, earmarked specifically for enforcement. Now, this isn't just a little budget bump. The analysis calls it a foundational capital injection, money designed to build an infrastructure that's meant to last. And to really get a sense of the scale here, just look at this comparison. With this new cash infusion, the annual budget for ICE is now 62% larger than the entire budget for the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Think about that. The Bureau of Prisons is responsible for about 155,000 inmates. ICE's target is around 100,000 detainees. The amount of money being spent per person, it's just in a totally different league. And this is where we get to what the source analysis calls the first rule in the playbook. See, by spreading that money out over 4 years, the funding isn't just a one-off. It becomes structural. It's locked in. The whole idea is to make sure it outlasts any one election cycle. That way, the contracts signed and the buildings built today, well, they're still generating revenue for years to come. Okay, so the money is secured. What's the next logical step? You have to build the capacity. I mean, you can't bill for beds if the beds don't actually exist, right? So let's take a look at just how fast the physical footprint of this system has exploded. 212. As of December 2025, that's how many active ICE detention centers are up and running across the country. And here's the wild part. According to the data, that network nearly doubled in just 1 year. That is an incredible rate of expansion, and they're doing it by reactivating old, shuttered facilities and even repurposing everything from military bases to local county jails. And yeah, let's be crystal clear. We are not talking about a few small holding cells here. These are massive complexes. I mean, just look at some of these numbers. The El Paso camp holds almost 3,000 people a day. Adams County, over 2,000. The analysis is right. These are basically small cities, many of them managed by private companies. But when you build that fast, things start to slip through the cracks. And this leads us to the second rule in the playbook, according to the source: build faster than anyone can inspect. And the numbers seem to back that up. Facility inspections actually dropped by 36% in 2025, at the exact same time that reports of massive overcrowding were surging. Okay, so the buildings are up, the infrastructure is there, but that's just a sunk cost, right? The real money, the profit, comes from using it, from occupancy. So that brings us to the most important question. Who is actually filling all these tens of thousands of new beds? Well, the data from early 2026 points to something really critical. Take a look at this chart. The vast majority of people in detention, almost 75% of the entire population, have no criminal record. And the source points out that even for the small minority who do, many of those convictions are for things like traffic offenses. And this number shows you how the system is being fed, 2,500%. That is a massive increase. It's the growth in just 1 year of non-criminal detainees who were arrested in what they call at-large interior operations. So we're talking about arrests happening deep inside the country, nowhere near a border. So when you put all that together, the analysis concludes that to keep those occupancy rates high and the revenue flowing, the playbook's third rule kicked in. The beds don't fill themselves. You have to redefine who belongs in them. And that's when the system's focus shifted, away from the border and toward these community-level arrests, creating a whole new pipeline to keep the facilities full. So you've got the government providing the money, the mission, and even the people. But who's actually running the show day to day? Well, the source material is really clear on this. The actual operations and the profits are mostly handled by private, for-profit corporations. And it's really a duopoly. Two giant corporations, the GEO Group and CoreCivic, they just dominate this space. You can see here they manage a staggering 80 to 90% of all the private detention beds in the US. And for them, business is booming. They're reopening old facilities and signing huge new billion-dollar contracts with ICE. All right, let's connect the last few pieces of the puzzle here, because the argument from the source is that this system isn't just profitable by chance. It's been designed from the ground up to be permanent, to be self-perpetuating. So let's see how the political and financial gears lock everything together. A huge part of this is what the source calls the revolving door, and this example is just perfect. You have Daniel A. Bible, he's the career ICE official, in charge of the entire detention system. He leaves his government job, and where does he go? He immediately becomes an executive VP at GEO Group, which just happens to be ICE's biggest contractor. And the analysis is clear. He's not an exception. He's part of a pattern. And of course, that relationship is greased with money, a lot of it. The source material tracks almost $2.8 million in political contributions just from these two companies and their execs to the current administration. On top of that, you have millions more from their PACs going to various candidates. It's all about ensuring the political and regulatory environment stays very friendly to the business. And the final piece, Wall Street. The whole operation gets financialized. You look at who the biggest shareholders are in both GEO Group and CoreCivic, and you see the same names, huge asset managers like BlackRock and Vanguard. And what that means is the retirement funds and 401ks of millions of everyday people are now invested, even if passively, in the business of immigrant detention. And this is such a critical point to understand, that $170 billion, it didn't just materialize out of thin air. The source analysis really stresses that this was a direct trade-off. To fund this massive expansion in enforcement, significant cuts were made to social services, things that could affect healthcare and food assistance for millions of Americans. And all of this leads to the one central question that the analysis leaves us with. What if you took the profit out of it? What if you removed the per-day billing, the corporate lobbying, the Wall Street investments? Would this whole massive structure of detention still exist? Or, as the source suggests, is profit not just a feature of the system, but its very foundation?